Can you chat with me today? It's pretty important. Good morning, everybody. This is Jesse with ROI Safety Services. If you are watching live, welcome. We are going to cover today's training will be lockout tagout, and this actually is going to cover a lot. It is very, very close to our regular training module. So this is going to be a pretty thorough training in terms of what we're going to cover, but it's not 100%. It's not going to qualify you as a competent person to do lockout tagout. That's not the purpose of this training. The purpose is to provide managers and business owners and whatever position you're in a really good understanding of what lockout tagout is, how does it apply to me in the workplace, and what do I need to do to implement this program and stay compliant, and of course to save employees from getting injured and from you going to jail. So the purpose is to help small business to stay OSHA compliant. This is just our general purpose for this training, not just lockout tagout, but everything. I want to make OSHA requirements make sense. And that has always been a challenge over the last couple decades is, okay, we want to be OSHA compliant. We hear this almost daily. But what does that mean? What kind of effort do you need to make? And what applies to your work environment and what doesn't apply? And so that's the purpose of this training, is to help you understand, where do we even start? What do we have to get done? This is what I hear all the time. What are the minimum requirements? And I get the meaning behind that, but do you really want to just have those minimum requirements? Because sometimes those minimum aren't enough. Actually, oftentimes they are not enough. So that is something that needs to be addressed at each of your locations. Okay. I want everybody that's hearing my voice and watching this video. OSHA must be site specific. Okay. You must implement this at each of your sites, and it's never going to be the same at each location. Okay. If you have 10 facilities, you're going to have 10 different types of locked out tagout equipment, or they may be similar, but you may have some different things here, different things there. And that goes for every topic, for every lockout tagout, for every HAZCOM, for every emergency action plan. None of them are going to be identical. So that is the unique thing about OSHA, is you got to have a site specific plan. It's just not implementing a blanket corporate plan is fine, but you still need to make it site specific. Provide guidance in how to implement these requirements. And this is going to be limited. I don't know what you're going through over where you're at. I don't know what's happening there. Are you a machine shop? Are you a printing shop? Are you a recycling company? I don't know. So there's so many variables. But you need to have a lockout tagout program. Everybody who's dealing with machines must have a lockout tagout program. And I say machines, I mean every kind of equipment that you could have at your site. Most of it needs to be locked out when it's broken, or you need to replace some parts or preventive maintenance, whatever the case may be. And then we want to prevent owners and managers from going to jail. This is a reality. You can go to jail if you're not doing your role in preventing injuries and fatalities to the people that work for you. That is the truth. You can go to jail. You can get fined. You don't need to go far. You just Google owner goes to jail for OSHA violation. It's happening all the time. Is it likely? I'm going to say no. I know a handful of people who've been significantly impacted by doing something that had led to a major injury and even a fatality. And so it's not something that I mean, it's not common, but it does happen. And when it does happen, it's quite significant. So you can Google and read some articles. There's plenty of them out there. And then we want to prevent employees from injury or death. And that really is my driver is to, I don't want people dying. Okay. There's 6,000 people a year die in the US. And I don't think it's going to get better. I really don't. I think people are doing much more riskier things than ever before. Turnover is turnover. That alone is going to have a significant impact on injury and fatalities across the country. When you have a high turnover, which almost all of my clients have probably a 50 to 60% turnover rate, sometimes even higher. And that drains resources for training, retraining, and then if they can't get enough, if they can't hire somebody, then they go to temps, and temps is a big drain on companies as well. So this is our purpose. We want you to get educated. We want you to do the right thing. We want you to, we don't want people dying or having injuries. So that is our purpose. That is why I do this free weekly training. And every week we're going to do a different topic. If you have any suggestions, send me a message. I would love to hear what each of you would like to do. So what is lockout tagout? It is the OSHA standard. It's published in '89. It covers servicing and maintenance of machines, okay, that have stored energy, which could injure an employee. It's very simple. If you got a machine, you probably need a lockout tagout program. Not too complicated. It doesn't cover construction, electrical utilities, there's other, electrical exposures covered by subpart S, oil and gas. So there's some specific requirements for that. So this is just going to cover general industry, which is most manufacturing. I look out my window and everything out there is going to be general industry. The mom and pop shops, the machine shops, the auto body shops. We have a big Costco out there, and I'm sure that Costco has, some kind of crusher for cardboard and various things that do need to be locked out. Maybe some compressors and stuff like that. So it really does apply to everybody. And it applies during servicing and maintenance. It does not apply to normal production. So if you have a bottling process or some kind of process where you can make minor adjustments without, bypassing a machine guard, then that's okay. But I caution you, only if an employee has to remove a guard or bypass a safety guard or place any part of the body in that area. Just be cautious with this, okay? Be cautious with this. And it doesn't apply to any equipment that's plugged in. It doesn't apply to, but again, this is one of those things. If it's plugged in, what's stopping it from being plugged back in while somebody's doing something to the machine? I had an employee or a company out in Ontario or something. They made really, really super high-end fine furniture. And a lathe was unplugged. Somebody was working on it. Somebody plugged it in, and it turned on. Obviously, they plugged it in, and somebody got hurt. The craziest thing. So what could we do about that? Just put a cap on it. Put I don't have a picture in my slide, but it's just a lockout tagout cap for the plug. I recommend you do that. I mean, we need to prevent people from doing things like that. And so the standard's purpose, it requires employers to establish a program. Okay, identify what you need to lock and tag out, put in a program, and make sure that you've exhausted, all of your resources and evaluated everything you can to ensure that you're compliant. And this does take time. Look at all your machines. Wonderful. Get caps for the plugs. If everything's hardwired, you're gonna need to put that in the procedure because you're gonna have to lock and tag it out when you do, whether it be breakdown maintenance or whatever the case may be. Now, what are these definitions? Energized simply means it's connected to an energy source or containing residual or stored energy. Energy source is any source of energy. Could be anything: water, hydraulic, Lockout is a placement of a lockout device on an energy isolating device. A lockout device is a device which uses positive means, such as a lock, most commonly is going to be a lock, to hold energy isolated device in a safe position so it can't turn on. Servicing and or maintenance is a workplace activity such as adjusting, cleaning, constructing, inspecting, installing, there's lubricating. There's so many different types of services that may be done, and it may be so subtle as changing out a die that it just doesn't dawn on you that it needs to be locked out. There needs to be some kind of safety measure in there. I go to a lot of these punch press companies, and they just swap out these dies so quickly, and they don't even consider it being or locking and tagging in and out, and it needs to be evaluated. Tagging out is a placement of a tag, the red tags, and put that on the equipment so everybody knows that it's locked and tagged out. And an energy control program. You must have an energy control program. It is required. They're not that complicated, but it must be done. You can create a program. You can go get a template. You can call ROI, whatever you want to do. We can help you with that. They're not too complicated, but you must have a documented written program. And it must be site specific. So a tag out system shall be used only if an isolating device cannot be locked out. This shouldn't be the norm. There shouldn't be anything that's just using a tag. That is not the best route to do this. So if the isolating device can be locked out, lock it out. Okay, just lock it out. If you have some really old equipment, have somebody go in there and maybe retrofit it to where you can lock it out. But using a tag alone, I think, is a very, very risky situation. Now, when machinery is replaced or undergoes any major repair, it shall be designed to accept lockout devices. I very rarely come across equipment that just can't be locked out for this reason. So if you have some old equipment, look at getting it retrofitted. Now, full employee protection. If a tag out device is used on equipment capable of being locked out, the tag shall be placed in the same location the lock would be. The employer must demonstrate equivalent safety, which I think is almost impossible, but hey, give it a shot. To demonstrate, the employer must show full compliance with provisions and remove circuit elements or block control switches. It is kind of difficult to do, so I recommend having a lock. So procedures shall be developed. You must have a documented procedure. I've gone into hundreds of facilities over the years, and they'll say, look, I have a lockout tagout procedure, or I'm sorry, a lockout tagout program, and I'll look at it, and it says in the program, a lockout procedure shall be provided for each piece of equipment, and this is very rarely ever done. We did a I think they made pasta at this facility in Ontario. Was it Ontario? I think it was Ontario or Chino. Anyways, they had a program, but they had over 60 machines, 60 different machines that required a site specific or a specific machine lockout tagout. They didn't have any procedures for that. And each one of them, they were very similar and required very similar procedures, but not all of them were the same. So one needed water that needed to be isolated. Another needed another type of, I think it was heat, and then electricity. So there were some variables, and that needs to all be in the procedure for that piece of equipment. So exceptions are employers need not document it. All of the following exist. The machine has no potential for release of energy. And again, site specific, you need to evaluate it. And the machine has a single energy source readily identified and isolated. So evaluate your equipment. Each company needs to evaluate each of their piece of equipment. And if you have, and this is very common, especially with machine shops, they may have 20 CNC units that are all the same, which is really easy to do. You really just write one procedure for it, and you must verify those. So again, there's some CNC machines that may have, a unique setup. And so you just need to evaluate that. Some, maybe the electrical current's different, or it has something unique. And so we need to look at each of them and just ensure. So some other exceptions are isolation and lockout completely de-energized and deactivated the machine. The machine is isolated from energy source and locked out during servicing or maintenance. A single lockout device will achieve lockout. And that is probably one of the most common is it really does that. You just go to the panel. Oftentimes the lockout device is under control of the employee servicing or maintenance or maintaining the machine. So again, each of these need to be evaluated. So some additional exceptions: the servicing or maintenance does not create a hazard for others. The employer has had no accidents from the release of energy while servicing the maintenance, maintaining the equipment. Now, the written procedures, these are the requirements. You have to have a scope, a purpose, and who's managing the program, who's in charge of implementing it. Now, it should include intended use, steps for shutting down, use of tags, and testing the requirements and verify effectiveness. So just a standard program. You must have locks and tags, chains or whatever, and you can pretty much get anything at your local Granger or whoever you use for equipment. There are so many different types of locks and unique locks that you can use. I have never found a piece of equipment that had a lock and tag out device that I wasn't able to find something that actually worked. So there's a lot out there. They must be durable. They must be able to withstand the environment in which you're working in. They must have color, size, and shape, and print be standardized. So the tags and locks, everything should be standardized. There's all kinds of fancy things you can do today. You can have the tags with the employee locking the device out. You can have their picture on there. You can have an ID. You do all kinds of cool stuff with lockout, tag out. Some of the aerospace companies that I've worked with have really, really unique lockout, tag out setups. So there is a lot of resources out there to implement at your site. And again, if you can't do it, find a consultant, use ROI. We are happy to help you with this. This is something that absolutely needs to get done. So the tag out system shall warn of hazardous conditions. On the legend, the tag should have do not start, do not open, do not close, do not energize, and do not operate. Very simple tags. I didn't include a picture in this training. Again, this is not going to be thorough, exhaustive training. This is to give you guys an idea of what you need to do. And then once you establish your program, it needs to be audited. You need to have verification of implementation and effectiveness. So we use the Planning, Doing, and Checking Act. We do that with all of our programs with our clients. Make sure that it's working, it's functional, and we audit books, we audit records, and we look for trends, we look for discrepancies, and we want to make sure that the employees are trained. And we document all this, right? So employees must understand the purpose and function of the program. They must have knowledge and skills to implement this. They must include recognition of energy sources, purpose and use, procedures, and prohibitions. Now, this training must be done by a competent and qualified person. Will a video work? No. It needs to be site specific. A video is good for just an overview of lockout, tag out. This is the standard. This is how it works. This is how you need to implement it. Just what I'm doing right now. Does it meet the site specific requirements? No. You still need to have a competent and qualified trainer. How do you get around that? Well, you typically got to hire somebody. You got to bring a professional in, evaluate your system, provide the site-specific training. That is what we recommend. That will definitely meet the OSHA training requirements. So if a tag-out system are used, employees must be trained on the limitations of that. And this is where it can get a little sketchy. You tag-out systems, I don't think are a good idea, but if you have to implement them, you better have clear, concise documented procedures for this. So warning rather than restraining devices must not be passed, ignored, or defeated, must be legible and understandable, securely attached and able to withstand the environment, may create false sense of security, and is only a part of the overall program. This is where we get into that gray area. We want to ensure that it works effectively. And then employees must be retrained. If there's a change in assignment, if machines, equipment, or processes that create a new hazard, periodic inspection reveals a need for retraining. New or revised control methods are introduced, and of course, training must be documented. I recommend, and of course, this is what we do, but annual training is one of these are going to get triggered throughout the year. There's going to be a change. There's going to be some new procedures written. You're going to get some new equipment. So it's best practice to do this training annually and to update it annually. And during the audit, you're probably going to find something. So we do recommend annual refresher training. And of course, as humans are, we forget things and we get into bad habits. So having refresher training is always a good idea. Now, I'm going to cover this briefly, but procedures for shutting down and for your actual equipment procedures must be site specific. I recommend taking pictures, even video, but you must have a documented procedure for shutting and locking out each piece of equipment. Let's say a CNC machine. You have to have site specific procedures for that particular machine. So procedures shall include preparation for shutdown, machine or equipment shutdown, machine or equipment isolation. The lockout tagout device application shall be affixed by an authorized employee, and that is somebody who's gone through this training, through lockout tagout training. For authorized, there's two types of training, and I think we're going to get into that, but I'll just touch on it now. You have authorized, and then you have affected. And then the authorized are, of course, anybody who can lock out and tag out equipment, which is usually your maintenance staff. Affected is typically going to be somebody working on the equipment or working in the area or using the equipment to make whatever product it is. So shall hold the energy isolating device in a safe off position. Tagout device shall be affixed to prohibit moving the energy isolating device from its safe or off position located where a lock would be attached, and if it can't be attached, should be in an obvious place. Okay, stored energy. After applying the device, you check if there's any residual energy, and this is what the procedure will tell you. Hit the on-off switch, make sure there's no energy in there, make sure everything's functioning properly, you got everything in place, and you got everything ready to go. And then you start your work or whatever you're going to be doing on it and inspect the area, make sure everything's clear, and then of course you restore and just reverse those procedures. Okay, now the other thing to consider, and again, this is not exhaustive training, this is touching on the highlighted sections that you need to have implemented for each piece of equipment. Outside contractors have always been a problem when it comes to lockout tagout. I caution you as an owner, a manager, when you bring in contractors, make sure they have a lockout tagout procedure. If they are not implementing lockout tagout while they're working on your equipment, you are responsible for that. You cannot rely on the contractor for being responsible for that. You need to hold them accountable. Okay? Group lockouts are very, very common, and most machine shops, most shops have their maintenance staff lock something out and maybe have an electrician come in and maybe do some troubleshooting. It's very common to have multiple locks on a piece of equipment. Okay, so that needs to be considered in your program. Shift changes are another problem. This is an area that needs to be clearly identified in a site-specific procedure. So there's some work to be done. If you have a really good program, look at it again, audit it, make sure it works for you. If you haven't considered contractors or shift changes, please consider that and make your program site specific and more robust, and audit it frequently. And I appreciate each of you for checking out our video. I hope this is helpful. Drop me a message. Let me know what you think. Contact us, ROI Safety Services. We are located in Yorba Linda, California. We provide on-site training across the country. We are in every state, and we will provide on-site, site-specific training as OSHA intended. That is our purpose. Our purpose is to create zero injuries in the workplace because we put people first. We want to be there and support you and prevent injuries and fatalities, and so we can go about our business and make money, right? That's what we want to do, is make money without having any injuries and fatalities and be compliant. All right. Thank you very much. You guys have a blessed weekend. Once again, my name is Jesse with